Yo, what is going on, you guys? So today I'm bringing guys a brand new sports cards video. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the dangers of sports card investing. 5 main dangers that I've come up with that have really haunted me in the past and have haunted a lot of investors. And I'm going to be breaking down how you can really minimize your risk by keeping these dangers in your head when investing, so that you're just better equipped and better prepared when these dangers do come. So before we get into that, I did want to say I'm bringing back my giveaways. I know I haven't done one in a while. So for today's video, we are giving $50 Cash App to one lucky person who subscribes, likes this video, comments the word done. When I say Cash App, I mean it could be PayPal, Zelle, whatever it is. But $50, we're giving it away. So if you would like to enter, all you have to do is subscribe, like this video, comment the word done. 3 simple steps for a chance at $50. But without further ado, we are going to hop right into this video. So the first main danger, of course, is going to be injuries. When investing in sports cards, this is pretty much the most obvious. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but essentially, if your player gets injured, we've seen prices dip as much as 90% on some injured players. The worst in recent memory that comes to mind is going to be guys like Trey Lance, that just had so much hype going with them, and then one season-ending injury, and his prices just go from up here to down here overnight. So in case of an injury, if you own a card and the player does get injured, there's pretty much 2 options that you have, right? You wait, you hold it out, wait till he comes back, but that is usually not the right approach, and I'll tell you why. Essentially, prices are going to probably come down around 50% the day of, and that is basically the next comps that come in are going to be pretty much for a guy like Trey Lance, who had so much hype and had a season-ending injury. Prices would go down 50%, but prices would continue to slide over the next, 5 to 6 months. And usually when there starts to be hope for return, that's when you start to see his prices pick back up. So in that meantime, if you were to sell the card as soon as it cuts 50%, do some other work with that money and get back in at its low point, you can ride up the injury, because after the injury happens, and he's been out for a while, people start to forget about him. People are not buying his cards. The demand for his cards is not quite there. And when his demand is at an all-time low, that provides an incredible buying opportunity. And I've personally bought into a lot of players coming off of an injury, and when they do return, the prices really spike back up. One person who really comes to mind is Kevin Durant. When he went down with his Achilles injury, that was an incredible buying opportunity in 2020 before he had made his Nets debut, because at that point, people were just so unsure. And to be honest, the market being unsure is going to be even worse than the market knowing of the injury. It's the unsure moments in the market where prices stumble the most, because it's just no one knows what's going to happen, and there's so much fear. And as soon as he came back and he looked to be Kevin Durant again, his prices just jumped. So we're seeing that with a lot of different players. I would highly suggest buying into players that could potentially return to 100%, because you're going to get some steep discounts. But if you're a seller and your player gets injured, I would suggest selling it as soon as possible, to be honest. But without further ado, we are going to hop right into the next danger of sports card investing, which is going to be relevance. I see a lot of people investing for the long term, they call it. And they're buying these young players, or even, guys who are well in the league right now. For example, guys like Kevin Durant, who a lot of people think are going to be incredible long-term investments. And what I will say to that is that I personally disagree with that. I know Kevin Durant is an amazing player, probably a top 20 player of all time, if not even higher. I don't know. You guys might have him top 15, top 12, whatever it is you guys have him. But in the long term, there has to be relevance around the player. And I'll give you one big example. It's going to be guys like Tim Duncan, who've kind of retired, stayed a little bit more shy from the media. He's still a top 10 player of all time. He's loved in San Antonio. He's got his market, but his prices haven't really, gone to where they should be, right? And that is simply because he's not relevant. There's not as much demand to his cards as there hypothetically should be with him being a top 10 player of all time. as great of a player as he was, he just doesn't have that demand around him. So that's one thing you really have to keep in mind. When a player is currently playing is when he's likely going to be the most relevant. There are going to be players who retire and just lose relevance. Maybe they don't want to be in the spotlight anymore. So when you're investing in players, you have to really understand what is going to cause this player's price to go up. And simply being a top 10 player or top 15 player of all time, I don't think that alone is going to do it. I think that's one incredibly important component, but I think there's plenty other components that come in to play when determining someone's prices, including guys like Shaq, right? Shaq's cards, for the most part, haven't really taken off. They haven't really done incredibly well. Maybe it's because he's a center. Who knows? But he's also one of the most likable players in NBA history and one of the most well-known faces of the NBA. So these are really things to consider. When a player is currently playing, chance to win championships, dropping 40-point games, of course, there is going to be demand over the player. If there's a chance he wins a championship, chance he wins MVP, all that type of stuff is great, and it could cause the player's prices to go up. But you have to really think when you're investing in a player, if he's in the spotlight right now and could maybe potentially not be in the spotlight years from now or months from now, whatever your plan is, you have to really take those things into consideration, because simply him being a great basketball player, a great football player, a great baseball player is not alone going to be enough, in my personal opinion. Now, without further ado, we're going to hop right into the next danger of sports card investing, which is, of course, overprinting. If you buy into a card, for example, a Luka Doncic Prism PSA 10, or better yet, somebody who's even more new, right? Like an Anthony Edwards Prism PSA 10, and the population on that card is currently 500. Say you have a PSA 10, the pop is 500. Now, if that card is a fairly new card in the last year or two, or whatever it is, the last couple of years, and they continue to get graded, you have to consider that when you buy this card that's a pop 500, if you're planning on holding it the whole season, and by the end of the season, the pop of that card could be 900. Just hypothetically speaking. For example, it's a more recent player whose Prism cards just came out, and people are sending them into grading, and people are getting them back. Now, if that population is going to double, the demand has to double as well for the price to even stay the same. So we saw that so much with base cards. I think it's pretty obvious at this point that buying cards with high pops that continue to get graded, it's not really going to work out unless demand continues to go up like it was in 2020 and 2021. So I would highly suggest, if you're buying a card, to take that into consideration. If people are still grading this card at a high clip, at a high percentage of these cards continue to get graded and grade well, or grade the grade that you currently have bought, you have to consider that if the supply is going to double of your card, the demand has to more than double for the price to go up. And that is a tough thing to ask, right? That the demand on this card is going to more than double by the end of the season. So you're just putting yourself in a tougher situation. And that is why I highly suggest, sticking to lower pop cards in that case, or sticking to cards where you believe that demand is going to far outpace supply, because that's how prices go up, right? At the end of the day, it's just a supply and demand game. And I truly know that if you're buying cards that are going to be high supply, you got to have, a plan or, some vision that the demand is going to be much higher in the future. So without further ado, we're going to hop right into the next big danger, and that is that you're grading with a company that's not going to hold much value in the long term. And one key example over the last few years has been BGS. BGS prices were BGS 9.5s were at the same price of a PSA 10 just a couple years back in 2020. Now we're seeing BGS 9.5s in some cases going for 30 to 40% the price of a PSA 10. And so that is a huge change. So you really have to stay after consumer behavior and which grading companies people will go after. Another example is SGC. SGC has only gotten stronger in value. If you bought SGC cards when they first came out, you could buy them for pennies on the dollar compared to a PSA 10. And now SGC 10s are very close to PSA 10s. So you really have to consider, that you believe in not only the player, not only the card, but that you believe in the grading company. of the card that you're buying. You have to believe in the grading company, or else your whole investment can potentially fall apart. There's certain cards that the PSA 10s have tripled over the last 3 years, but the BGS 95s haven't really done much. And that is just because BGS values have not held up as well as PSA 10s or PSA in general. So that is definitely another big danger. And the last danger I want to talk about is unable to sell the card when the time is right. Say you did everything right, you bought this player at the right time, you bought this card at the right time, and you're ready to sell it. The price even went up. You see a comp that's higher than what you paid. So you're like, oh my God, great investment. You have to be able to sell the card when the time is right, or else everything is pointless. And ways to sell cards, I made plenty of videos on that, but you have to, have some urgency when you're selling a card. And even if you get a lower offer, but you're like, look, I've taken this around for a week. This is the highest someone wants to pay. It's lower than I want to sell it for. Chances are, sell the card. I would definitely say if the time is right to sell it, don't be greedy and squeeze every last dollar that you can possibly get. Sell the card for the price you can get. If you're making a win, if you're making some money, make some money and move on, because chances are it's going to take a long time to find the guy who's going to pay the absolute right price for your card. There's someone out there who will pay comp for your card, but to be able to find that guy is the challenge. So definitely post your cards to as many places as possible, get seen by as many people as possible, and then from there it is what it is. But I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Once again, if you would like a chance to win $50 free, all you have to do is follow 3 easy steps: subscribe, like this video, comment the word done. Other than that, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'm out. Peace.